Are you all set? Okay. Good evening, everyone. We're going to call to order the Narragansett Town Council regular meeting. Today is Monday, May 6th, 2024. The time is 7 p.m. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We're going to start off the meeting with approval of minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from the April 1st, 2024 regular meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion by Council Lawler, seconded by Councilor Kopech. Motion passes 5-0. Next, we have a motion to extend the period of time for filing the minutes of the April 9th, 10th, 11th, 2024 budget work sessions.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion by Councilor Lawler, second by Councilor Kopech. Motion passes 5-0. Next up for announcements presentations, we have our town manager's update. Mr. Tierney?
Good evening, Council, folks at home and folks who are here this evening. The May 20th meeting, we will have a presentation on the bike path, which is open to the public here in the chambers, regarding police recruitment. We have 3 vacancies on the police department and only 2 remaining applicants in the process. The selection process is still not completed. The chief and his team are working diligently to recruit, but as you know, it remains difficult to entice qualified persons to choose a career in law enforcement these days. Some good news, the dune grass planting that took place at the beach a couple of weeks ago, Deb Kopech was one of the participants along with Tom Hoagland, her husband. It was incredible work done by the volunteers and Save the Bay to plant the grasses in the dunes at the town beach. All the plants purchased for this project were planted by people from all over Rhode Island. And these are Deb's words to say, and I believe is very accurate. This is a testament to what a meaningful icon this beach is for Rhode Islanders. We'd like to recognize the work done by Wenley Ferguson, Katie Alves, Julie Lewis, and Ian O'Hara, among others, and town staff that supported the efforts. The program was so well organized, from providing equipment and moving folks from planting to removing litter from the dunes and the beach itself, that the volunteers were delighted to have participated, and we're delighted that they did it. The grass has already made the beach a much better place to look at, and it will make it more sustainable. Michelle Kershaw, who has a family event this evening, we'd like to thank her for spearheading this project, and I hope Narragansett continues to partner with Save the Bay to help mitigate the grow issues caused by sea rise, storms, and erosion. They really did a great job, and we will hopefully reap the benefits for years to come, and we are very grateful for all the volunteers that did that. And we continue to try to improve the beach from the storm, and we'll be ready to open on schedule. We received a couple of inquiries about the Narrow River study for the dredging project. We had an update last week on May 1st. We met with Forth Engineering, and we have now the okay to use the sand that would, if it is approved, to dredge in most of the areas to place it on the beach. They have several options that they're going to present to the town council for what are the dredging alternatives and potential cost. And they still have one other phase that they want to complete, which is a topography survey. And from that, they'll be able to determine what they can do depending upon what dredging project is chosen, if it is so chosen, and how it will be distributed on the beach and what the effects might be. And that is about it for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, next we will move on to the open forum public comment portion of the meeting. Again, the comments of citizens addressing the council are neither adopted nor endorsed by the body, but heard as requested. Note, public comment will not be taken on matters involving open litigation. And the rules are you can sign in to speak. There's a sign-in sheet at the back of the chambers. Please state your name and address when you come up to the podium. speak only on topics not on the meeting agenda, and there is a 3-minute limit per speaker subject matter, and please be orderly and respectful. Mr. Tierney, who's our first?
The first speaker is Richard Vandermersch.
Thank you. And I guess only Susan might remember this. It doesn't seem that long ago, but I decided we wanted to do Narragansett 125. And I tried 8 times. On the 9th time, Chris Wilkins said, "I'd give up, we'll do it." And all of a sudden, people came out of the woodworks for some spectacular shows. Now, I'm trying to interest the town again, I'll say this again, in 3 major events. The most significant worldwide event that occurred in Rhode Island happened on December 19th, 1675, with the Holocaust performed on the Narragansetts and the Wampanoags at the Great Swamp. Now, that is now obviously in South Kingstown, but the Narragansetts marched from their encampments at Canachet Farm. So, we don't know when, but I would say sometime in the late November. I'm hoping we can do a symbolic walk from Canachet Farm to the statue of Canachet, which we have up near the beach, and then perhaps a bus or some cars going to the Great Swamp. Now, this might inspire South Kingston to get more excited too. So this is something we can do, and we would get worldwide attention because the Great Swamp Massacre, Holocaust, fight, whatever you want to call it, is a world event. A second event is the 250th celebration of the only Revolutionary War victory in Rhode Island, the capture of the HMS Siren off the coast of Point Judith. The third is Lafayette's visit here on 6/24/1780, when he stayed at the Robinson Farm off Boston Neck Road on his way to meet the French Rochambeau, who had come from France to Newport. I urge us to get interested in this because this makes us stand out. We've got a tremendous history here, and I urge people to maximize its use.
Thank you. Next.
Sue Bush.
Hi, Sue Bush, 65 Robinson Street. Thank you for allowing me to address you tonight. I'm a little concerned about the parking ordinance. I'm really confused by it too. I was looking at it and I couldn't believe how complex it is, how every street and every block of every street has different rules. I even noticed last year, I don't think this has changed, when I was looking at it, there were different places that you were supposed to put your sticker on your car depending on which street you were on. I mean, why? Why can't a CSO always look at the same spot on the car? Seems like right-hand front fender is the right place, but I don't know. So where I'm coming from is, I'm on Robinson Street. There's 3 blocks. This is relatively simple, just 3 blocks being described, but some it's parking permit required, and some it's more of a restricted parking, 3 hours parking, unless you have a residential pass, then it seems you can park overnight on the street. I I still think it's overly restrictive. I don't like having to plan my social schedule around the parking ordinance. If I want to have people over, I've got to have them over after 5. If I want to have somebody, and then I've got to kick them out if they're parking on the road. Oh no, that 3-hour thing maybe doesn't even apply to me. I don't know, I'm confused by this whole thing. But I want to be able to have people over. I want to be able to have people park in front of my house, not on my lawn, which is probably the alternative some people will turn to. And that's how it was in the 90s when I lived here, and it's not a good look, let me tell you. It's not good, we don't want to go back. And when I have people come and work on my house, I want them to be able to not get a ticket, to be able to park in front of my house and not get a ticket. I mean, this all seems overly restrictive. Based on the fact that this is seasonal and it's 9 to 5, it seems like this is geared toward keeping people from parking on my street and walking to the beach. Nobody does that. I've been living in this house for over 20 years. Nobody does that. It's a pretty far walk from Robinson to the beach. That's not what's going on. What's going on in my street is there are 2 VRBOs that have pretty big driveways, but the people don't want to use the driveways because then they have to do the car shuffle. So we often have cars parked up and down both sides of the street for whatever is going on at these VRBOs, which are very large. They're like venues. They're not small, cute little apartments. They're big venues where they host big parties and weddings. So I'm not a big fan of what's going on here with the parking ordinance. I think it could be made a lot more simple in some ways. The sign on my street, I just noticed today, it says 3-hour parking. But that's not what this says, so I don't know if the new signs aren't up yet. I don't know what's going on. And then I was looking at the fines, and everything's $50 except for handicap parking. If you park in a handicap spot, it starts at $100. To me, that should start at $250. But everything's, take a look at these fines. Overtime parking, $50. Okay, parking in a prohibited area, $50. I think that should be higher. Parking on a sidewalk, a VRBO person has done this. I think that should be at least $100. So I'm just asking for simplicity. Please let the residents get guest passes so that we don't have to have our social life totally around these darn parking ordinances. It's my house. Can I use it the way I want to use it, when I want to use it? Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Win Hames.
Hi, Win Hames, 30 Wood Avenue, if you need anything. Okay. I'm not here tonight to argue against the restrictions on duplexes that hinder the diversity and affordability of the town. I'm not here tonight to argue against how the parking regulations hurt residences and businesses. So I'm not here tonight to argue against a 7-day minimum rental restriction that hurts businesses and residents. I'm not even here to argue against the 3-student ordinance that has already failed by driving up prices and residents out. Instead, I'd like to talk to you about the upcoming Memorial Day. Memorial Day is a day to remember those who have given the ultimate sacrifice to protect our great nation. An article in the Narragansett Times, dated 1915, describes the first Rhode Islander to die in the Revolutionary War. I'd like to read this to you. I learned things about this town, even being here 70 years, that I've never known before. And it's really exciting to find out this stuff. And Mr. Vangermish behind me, the historian of Narragansett, might know this. The Times, letter to the Times. It's best to remember the deeds of the brave, for every act of colonial heroism has a very choice place in the great and wonderful foundation of the American Republic. For whomsoever gave a loaf of bread, a cup of water to a soldier of that war, to the cause did something for the world and generations to come. But the soldier that lost his life in that war gave all he had, together with future usefulness of his life. Augustus Mumford, born in South Kingston, July 7th, 1744, fell upon the battlefield at Bunker Hill, June 17th, 1775. Mr. Mumford was born upon his grandfather's farm, now the estate of Governor Sprague, and was raised there to man's estate, cultivating the green fields by the seaside, together with his father, his brother, Simon, Gideon, and Paul. He was married to Ruth Fry of East Greenwich, December 25th, 1773. He was the son of William and Anne Ray Mumford. Okay, why the special note of his death is made? He was a South Kingston born and raised in Narragansett Pier. He sold out his inheritance with the rest of his brothers March 9th, 1771 to Governor William Robinson. In those days, when the Mumford family occupied the fields, the broad Atlantic was there, dashing in its blue billows upon the projecting rocks, just the same as it is now. And the long white level beach was there to be the playgrounds of the tides and the seagull. The shores were still rugged in many places with the primitive wood. These scenes, so majestic and grand, were then locked in the wild embrace of solitude, as had been for countless centuries of the past. But in the soul of this brave young man was one of the germs of our national importance, to make a start to save the national life of our brave young townsman gave his life upon the first field of battle, when the dews, as it were, upon the grass, or the sun scarce above the horizon of our national life. Now, Memorial Day. Augustus Mumford, mother and father.
Mr. Haynes,
buried.
just to let you know, you're over 38 seconds, so you can just finish,
Okay,
just
let me
briefly.
tell you where they're
Yeah.
buried, okay? They're buried in Sprague Park, okay? I was at the headstones today, looking at them. He is the first person to die in the defense of our country from all the wars that we've had. The very, very first person. He charged up Bunker Hill, and according to the reports, he had his head blown off by a cannon. I don't know where his body is, but the bodies of his family are there. The headstones are there. The bodies aren't underneath them. Okay, the bodies are out in left field of Sprague Park. They moved the headstones, but they never moved the bodies. But something even goes to our heritage or something. Something should be done to recognize this. And I'm here because Memorial Day is coming up. And I think it would be great to be able to do something, even short notice, just to recognize somebody from this town who's been so important to this country.
Thank you, Mr. Haynes. Next.
There are no other names that have signed up.
Okay. Ms. Ciliberto?
Catherine Ciliberto, 48 Earls Court. The company that did the 2020 10-year revaluation was Northeast, and that's now Catalyst. That company also did the 2023 statistical revaluation. Now, first, they never completed the whole evaluation in 2020 because it was during COVID, so they never went inside people's houses. So I was thinking about this today. I'm wondering, do we pay them the whole cost when they only did half the job? That said, so now here they come along and they do the 2023 statistical revaluation. Now we received our assessment. I disagree with it. That would be an understatement, so I'm going to appeal it. To appeal it, you have to get some information together. So I ran all the sales from 2023 because that's supposedly what the new assessments are based on. And I have yet to find any house that coordinates with, the sale coordinates with the assessment. Actually, just looking around the town, the assessments have gone up between 35% and 100%. I don't know how this could possibly happen in 3 years. It makes zero sense to me. So when Catalyst came to the town and handed you these assessments, did anybody sit down with them and say, pull 100 houses, say, and do a comparison of the what a house like that, say, sold for in 2023 as opposed to what it's assessed now? And I don't know, I'd like an answer to that question without filing an APRA. So if somebody could give me that, answer and email it to me, that would be nice. But I don't think we have pushed back enough. These assessments are so out of whack. And I know the tax rate's going to go down, but there are other ramifications when you own a house that's over-assessed. And one of them is estate implications. And that's why it's very important that someone's house, which is their biggest value, usually their biggest investment, is proper. The assessment has to be proper, a proper number, because you could end up owing a lot of money to the Rhode Island Division of Taxation if your house is overassessed. The other part of it is this. I don't know how people are going to keep up with these tax bills. Everybody goes, oh, that's so cheap in Narragansett. It actually is not cheap. We have 25% of the people in this town are 65 and older. A lot of them are on fixed incomes. Their tax bill is going to go up. I doubt if their pension or Social Security or whatever went up also. I don't know how people, you people think that these people are going to pay the bills. I really don't. You really have to start pushing back and like I say, when you hire a company and they just come at you with these numbers and there's no pushback on them or no questioning of them, I have to, wonder what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else that didn't sign up that wants just to speak before I move on to the consent agenda? Okay, seeing none. Okay, do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion by Councilor Lawler, second by Councilor Kopek. Motion passes 5-0. For old business, we do have one new item. It is a motion to approve an entertainment and holiday license application submitted by the Market at Gansett Rail LLC, doing business as Boone Street Market, 145 Boone Street, Narragansett, Rhode Island, subject to state and local regulations.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so this was just coming back from us. There were some questions regarding just the times in comparison to other restaurants, and then this actually is the same. So it's nothing different from Celeste. So there isn't really an issue with the difference. And then didn't know if any council members wish to comment on it.
So, no, just we wanted to make sure it was fair with the surrounding establishments, so that's fine.
So it's 11 o'clock for
Yeah.
both. Perfect.
Okay,
I have just one
Sure.
comment.
Councilor Ferrandi.
Yeah, I just want to make people aware of this. I read the new one. I guess I was a little, I figured that we had all the seating capacity in before, and I guess the only number I saw was like 124. So right now, there's actually, with the inside, the back deck, and the front deck, there's about 414 occupancy. So, and I don't think that was mentioned before. And we had come across the time and all, and I guess that's what issue now. And my concern with the entertainment and dancing and all is I thought it was almost going to be like some sort of a block parties inside and out and all that, and I guess that's not the intent. But I don't know if the applicant's attorney is here to speak at all, but.
Sure, we'll let the applicant's attorney come.
When I saw the, just the amount, because everything else in the planning board, it doesn't mention full occupancy of that inside, outside, and the back deck. So that's the only thing that concerned me. I realized.
I don't have those numbers in front of me. I wasn't sure that was going to be an issue tonight. But I can tell you, I don't believe it's going to be a block-style type of venue. There's, I think in the summer, in the very back of the left-hand side patio, it's kind of an indoor-outdoor stage. I say stage, it's a place for the musician to stand. And the music is controlled by speakers that are controlled by management, not by the musician. I think that's what was the testimony from the last town council meeting when we were here for the liquor license. So it won't be a block party style venue.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's good. Anyone from the public wishing to comment on this agenda item? Mr. Vandermish?
Yes, I'd like to speak in favor of this because when the Narragansett Urban Renewal Project started, the hope was that this would extend out to Boone Street and the wonderful buildings past Boone Street. And that didn't work out. Our urban renewal was limited this, but Boone Street is opening up. The Narragansett Historical Society had a wonderful Boone Street bonanza, I guess. Was it last year, Sue? Last year. And anything we can do to expand Boone Street into the shrunken urban renewal area makes this town so much more exciting, especially if you get into the cemetery with nobody buried there, where Joseph Peace Hazard was to be buried. One of the most truly spectacular non-burial cemeteries in the world. And that extends out from Boone Street. And this is how Narragansett will once again appeal to all sorts of people, including the residents, because we have so many treasures here that we don't know about. And Boone Street is truly a magnificent street. Look at the church, the railroad station, all these wonderful artistic shops. This is really a treasure, and if we can draw people both ways from Boone Street into the urban area, if you want to call it an urban area, and this way, you're getting a lot more foot traffic and excitement.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public wishing to comment? If not, I'll take the vote. Motion to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion by Councilor Lawler, second by Councilor Kopek. Motion passes 5-0. Next up for new business from the fire department, we have a motion to approve change order number 2 with Aharonian and Associates Incorporated for additional architectural engineering services for the Point Judith Fire Station improvements renovation project in the amount of $90,000.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion from the council?
I had a question. If I understand what's happening here is we're utilizing whoever this organization is. But my question is are we going to have an owner's rep for this particular project as well, or are these people the owner's rep for this project?
We will address that as we get closer when it goes out to bid for the actual construction.
But that won't be part of the bid, this first bid, right?
No, this is for the architecture and engineering service. What happened was we had the funding for phase 1. We were going to do it in 3 phases, and then we had the ARPA money available, and then more, the infrastructure grant money funded by ARPA. So we decided it would be best to do it all at once and save on mobilization and scheduling and speeding up the process at the cost of the American Rescue.
I just wasn't, I couldn't tell if that was included or not, so that's what I
And
was.
once we get to the selection of the council selects the vendor, the construction contract, that'll be coming forward as well.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any other comments from the council? Anyone from, Ms. Siliberto? Anyone from the public? We have to start the public hearing in 2 minutes.
Catherine Celebrero, 48 Earls Court. This is a jump from $36,000 to $106,000. They initially bid $36,000 for this architectural study. And now they're saying they want, $70,000 more? You know, I have a problem with change orders. We hire companies that are well-known, they've been doing this work for years, and they can't seem to come up with the right amount that is appropriate. And I'm wondering, are they underbidding and then figuring, oh, I'll just come down the line and, up it later? And this is why I always say that contracts should go out, bids should go out for amount certain. This is a huge jump. It's not, a few grand.
May I, Council President? I
Yes,
don't normally
I was
address
just-
the public's
yeah,
comment.
I was going to
but
actually ask you.
This is completely separate from the first bid. What happened is American Rescue Plan money became available, nearly $1 million to the town. This addition is for phase 2 and 3 of their services, not phase 1, which was approved. So that jump is for phase 2 and phase 3 to be included with phase 1. with the new money that became available that was not available when we were going to do it by phases. So it's apples and oranges. It's not the same product. Yeah, the attachments have it in there, but thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so all in favor? Aye. All
Aye.
opposed? Motion by Counselor Lawler, second by Counselor Kopek. Motion passes 5-0. The time is 7:30. We need to go to the public hearing portion of our meeting. I have a motion to open and hold a second public hearing on the proposed budget for the 2024-2025 fiscal year.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion by Counselor Lawler, second by Counselor Kopek. Motion passes 5-0. This time I will call up our Finance Director.
Good evening, Council President Drzezinski and council members. As you said, tonight is the second public hearing of the town manager's proposed budget. I'm going to try to do this backwards again. Maybe it doesn't like me today. There we go. So these are the changes from the first public hearing. There was a $100,000 decrease in the school department's allocation, which would bring it down to 2.39%. There was a decrease of the land trust allocation. It was still at $75,000. We had done that for 2 years to make up for what they lost in ARPA, during COVID, I mean. So it's back to the $50,000, which is normal. NRPA, they did not request what I had in the budget. It was $40 difference. And visiting nurses services did not put in a request, so that was deleted. Then we have additions. So as you've heard, community development received the BRIC grant. So that was $52,500 match. So that was in this year's current budget, but they didn't use it yet, so we have to carry it to next year because the approval didn't come through to just recently. And they also received the approval for the SNAP grant. I believe I said it right. That's going to be an additional $56,500. You'll see that coming up in the future. They also requested an additional position to deal with the legislation and all the ordinance changes that are coming forward. That's just the salary. A tax assessor employee was added just in case of the tax structure changes we don't know about yet. That's just the salary. The IT, they had some increases in software, and the town clerk's office also had some increases in contracted services. As far as townwide, the benefits, medical and dental, the actual is $57,199, and that includes the savings of over $100,000 with the actual rates that came in, but then adding in benefits for the two people, the two FTEs added. Why is this happening? Okay, there we go. I may have hit it too fast. Just to recap, this is the pie chart that shows all the expenses, and as you can see that it's under 10% for all costs, equipment, supplies, materials, utilities, purchase service. I just wanted to reiterate that. I don't understand, but we'll just keep playing. Okay. So far, the impact on taxes is the proposed tax rate for the residential property is approximately $6.84 per thousand, and commercial intangible rate is proposed at $9.24. Current rates are $9.31 and $12.57. Again, the decrease in the tax rate is due to the revals and the 4% maximum increase in the tax levy as presented. And the tax levy increase is $2.3 million, which is 4% over the current year. Let's try it. There we go. Did it? Oh, it's a test. You got it? All right, thank you. I appreciate it. One, go forward one? Thank you. Okay. So this, again, just shows the levy and the tax rate and the difference if we went with a 2%. Over the next few years, we're losing about $3.8 million in growth, and then if we go 4%, we'll be gaining $1.15 million in growth year over year. Okay, next. Thank you. I did this PowerPoint to kind of show the increases in the values and the decreases in the tax rates. So we have a 22 value, which is the current 2 years ago, the 23 value, which is the new one with the 48% increase about. So we took a $410,700 home, and that's the new value as of the last valuation. And we did that with 3 homes spread across the town in different areas. So you can see that the $614,200 home is now $960,000, well, $60,400. Do you get that part? No. You see, that was last year, and then in this year with the reval, that's what they've gone up to actual. Again, just 3 homes, different parts of the town. So currently, we're at a $9.31 tax rate. That's what the folks are paying for their tax bills. In 2025, with the 4% increase in the levy, the tax rate down to $6.84. Those are the values, the taxes that they'll be paying. And you can see the change from 24 into 25 next year. It's $272, $1,183, $850. And then with the homestead, you'll see the change year to year is $245.57, $1,064.80, and $765.84. So you can see the change and the added expense to people with homesteads and without. And then it just goes to, I just went down to a 3% tax levy and a 2% tax levy, and the changes that the increases that they would be dealing with in 2025. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Too much? Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. Thank you for presenting the data.
All right. So considerations in this budget still are the additional FTEs, the GIS position, the zoning enforcement position, and building inspection, the 8 safer firefighters, which is the additional 5 months to carry them for a whole year next year, the 2 FTEs in rental registration, the community development position we just talked about, and the tax assessor position. There's also the community development match that's required to get those grants. It's about $400,000 in free funding from the state to get the match. So it's a BRIC grant carry forward of $52,500, and I need to add in the $56,500 for the SNEP grant award. So it's a total of 109. That we just found out about that recently.
I do have a question.
Mm-hmm.
The 2 FTEs for rental registration, I thought the funding for that was going to come from the fees that we're charging.
Yes, it will. Rental
So-
registration has its own
So that will
fund,
just
but you
be,
still.
so the fees would be
prove it.
considered revenue, and just, so there'd be a little bit more revenue than we would expect from that, right?
Right. For rental registration.
And do we know that that those dollars match, or, you know, that the revenue is going to cover this, if not
Right
more
now
than
it
this?
is.
Okay.
Right now, it covers it
And does
almost
that,
to the
and does that
penny.
include, that includes salaries and benefits, right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Then we have the affordable housing bond issuance of $3 million that there's in discussion. There's the capital improvement plan projects of $2 million, a little over $2 million. We have the transfers, which is the school department. Again, we decreased that 100,000, and it's down to 2.39%. There's a slight library increase of a little over 16,000 in the transfer allocation. The request is in the library budget, but it is not in the general fund as recommended by the town manager. He would like to keep that level funded, and we see what happens after their first year in the full building. So in our budget right now, it's level funded.
Shouldn't, in that circumstance, I mean, if I remember correctly, and I didn't look at this before this meeting, that the vast majority of that $16,000, if not all of it, was really about increases in salaries and benefits. And so if that's the case, which I think it is, that seems slightly inappropriate to me. It might be a little bit less because we have different, because you have the real numbers for the healthcare. But it seems to me that it makes, I mean, we didn't take any money away from any other department for the increases for those two things, for salaries and benefits. So that's.
I wouldn't know if it was all for salaries and benefits.
I mean,
There's many other things.
can-
There's also the
You can see it.
note.
But
It's
when
the
you look
note
at the, when you
payment.
look at the line
Okay,
items,
that's
you
fine.
can see it.
All
you
right.
know, So it's pretty obvious to me.
But is it part of, so this part of the operating budget was, so they have a new building, more efficient, and we don't know what the savings are going to be on the building?
Yeah, but the
So-
staff is not changing. In fact, they leveled, they leveled the staff. They didn't add anybody, even though the building's bigger, et cetera. So, I mean, I'd just like to maybe take another look at that.
Chris, what is the current unfunded balance there? Did they have a surplus?
Currently, it's about a little over $600,000. Obviously, it's a lot, almost 600, I don't have the exact number. It's 638,000 or something. So 600 of that will be going towards their project, the capital project. That will leave them with about $23,000 to $30,000 in fund balance going into 2025.
Thank you.
It's here somewhere, but I don't know where. Okay. There's some additional requests in the special appropriations in the amount of $8,404. There was an increase in the contingency from $300,000 to $600,000, and that's less than 1% of the operating budget. The thought behind that is there's a lot of ARPA money coming out and matches, and there may be retirements. So I thought it would be safer to have a little bit put away in the operating contingency account. There are the 8 safer firefighters. So for the balance of 2025, which is 5 months, it's about a $425,000 cost. And for 2026, it would be an additional $610,000 approximately cost to keep them into 2026. Again, we're looking at the pension fund actuarial determined contributions to be quite high through 32, 33, and then they will be going down. There's a new experience we're doing this year that should be done around June or July. That brings us to actual, and that may be recalculated at that point. Will be a reduction in debt service around 33 and 34 as well. There's discussion still about the tax classifications. There's a potential phase-out of tangible taxes to some degree over several years. That's still being discussed. Right now, there's a cap for Narragansett at $12.57. There's also being, the state is discussing a potential phase-out of local meal and beverage taxes by January 1st, 2028. That's over $1 million for us. That's huge. So, also what's going on in the last few days. So we were looking at a $4.5 million bond. We're requesting to increase that to $5 million. That would be $103,356 increase to the budget for 2025.
Can you repeat that, Chris?
Yeah, it's a $4.5 million. That's what we had initially agreed on.
That was the road bond?
For the road bond?
For the road and the front facade of the building, correct.
Okay.
And we would like to increase that, town manager would like to increase that to $5 million. And that is an increase in the front facade costs. And then there's also, we received a grant from the state, and it's going to require a match, 65%, for the town hall elevator to help with the ADA compliance. Do you have anything?
Our match is 65%?
Yeah.
Okay.
The congressional earmark. Go ahead.
The congressional earmark one that we applied for. It hasn't been awarded yet, but that's the numbers that they've given us at 65-35 for the whole construction of the interior elevator here at Town Hall to get rid of that cattle car that constantly breaks down. And this would make it fully ADA compliant with the front facade when that's completed with the access.
So is our share 65 or 35?
65.
65.
It is 65, okay.
But it's still a lot cheaper than paying for an elevator to replace this one, which has to be considerably, there'll be a lot of construction to get it done properly, because currently it's not fully compliant.
Yeah.
Chris, can I ask a question about that 4.5
Yes.
to 5 million? Does that mean we have 18 million left over for the infrastructure, for sidewalks, for road bonds? Because I know we've been bonding since 2012, and there's a lot of money behind it. So I was just wondering, is that the balance of the bonds?
It would be, we're issuing the 2.6 from the 2012 bond, right?
I sponsored that.
Yep, and so it would be 2.4 from the new bond, right, which was awarded at 20 million.
Right.
So that would be 18 change, yeah.
18
Yeah,
million
yeah.
left for roads, because
Yes.
because I know we're going to be talking about bonds later, and I just want to make sure that it's known that there is allocated money bonded 8.1 million, 18.1 million, right?
The original was approximately 5 million towards infrastructure for the town, and then 15 million towards roads.
Correct.
So it was, not exact, but that's what it was.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure
Yeah.
that was still around.
Yeah,
Okay, thanks.
yes. I think that is pretty much it. If you have questions, there's a lot of information up there. It came in at the last minute, so I had to squeeze that stuff in.
I just had one more question on the special appropriations. How did you determine that it was 8,000 additional, but just curious, what was the change in those special appropriations?
I don't have it in front of me. It was a little, I don't have it in front of me. It's in the budget, though. You can see where it was in 2024 and what we have in 2025. It's, 8.4. I don't remember what the
I just-
additional
There was
request
a
was.
couple, yeah.
I wasn't sure how it was based, what was the
Yeah.
rationale
It was
behind
just their request, whatever they
Yeah.
requested.
I think there were two of them,
Yeah.
yeah.
Any other council members wishing to comment or have feedback? I see Councilor Ferrandi.
I have a question. How much is the unassigned fund balance is going to the budget right now?
As of June 30th, 2023, our unassigned fund balance is $13,334,756, sorry. $13,334,756.
Right, but how much, is any of that going to help fund the balance?
For
Yeah,
this budget,
for
for
this
2025,
budget.
yes,
That's what I'm
sorry.
looking for.
As presented tonight, it's $2,163,615,
Okay, and
about 2.2.
last year, we were about a 3.4% increase on average for most taxes, I believe. So are we anywhere near that number now? I know you gave like each, try to give an idea.
It was about 3.47 for the tax rate,
Right.
and the
tax rate.
levy was a little, close to 4% for the maximum tax levy, right? It's close to 4. This year, it's 4%, but the tax rate, obviously, it has to go down because of the new valuations. So the tax rate is
Yeah,
down
right.
30%.
So would an increase in the unassigned fund balance drop that increase? Say 100,000, do you have it in your head what 100,000 taking from that would be?
600,000 reduces fund balance by 1%. So if you took 600,000 away and put it in the towards next year's budget. Is that what you're asking me?
Oh, this year's.
Well,
Right,
2025's
yeah,
budget.
right.
Yeah.
24, yeah. Oh, not this year, we're all talking.
It would reduce it, right? We're at about, right now, we're at 19.9% as of June 30th, right, 2023.
Yeah. Talking about the tax rate, what does it do with the tax increase?
It does nothing. The tax increase is whatever percent the council chooses to do. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4% increase of the levy. And then the tax rate is determined off what you do, the increase on the tax levy. If you assign fund balance to pay for some of the taxes, is
Yeah.
that what you're saying?
Right now it's at $2,163,000 we're taking from the unassigned fund balance to help fund next year's taxes,
Right.
correct?
Right. So if you
So-
take 600,000, it's just, you have to tell me what percent. Like, oh, okay, we're going to go 4% tax levy, but 1% is going to be coming from fund balance. Or something to that effect.
Yeah, you need a number
that
of
make-
how much
I-
more of an increase from the fund balance.
Right,
Okay, so
right.
suppose you added 400,000 to that, what would that do with the tax rate increase approximately?
So that slide I gave at 3%, it would go down to, from $6.84, it would go down to $6.78 at 3%. If you went down to 3% tax rate for the taxpayers, and then the other percent, you threw in 600,000 from fund balance, say.
Yeah,
You have, yeah,
so it goes down a little bit.
yeah. It goes down to, what, 4, 5, 6 cents.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah,
Councilor Waller?
actually, it's 4% a year, but you're saying for the next 5 years. So that's really a 20% increase for anybody who lives in this town, and it'll be a little bit more than that total. So like, what, 21.6%. That's an awful lot. I mean, we're going to be talking about affordable housing later on today, and I know my concern with this is that we need to make sure the people who are living here are still living here 3, 4, 5 years from now. That's an awful lot of a tax increase. So to kind of piggyback on to Steve's question is, you said we have about 13 million in unassigned fund balance right now?
Correct.
So could we, because I know we've done it before, take some of that money, so we've overtaken from the taxpayer, we have a surplus. So if we were to return that money, to a portion of that money to the taxpayer, we'll be able to bring down the taxes, so we don't have a 4% increase. We might have a 2% increase, or, you know, what would that look like? How much money in the unassigned fund balance will we need to put there? I don't want to see people leaving the town.
Yeah.
But just a clarification, because if I recall, so does the town require a certain percentage of a fund balance? Because I think that was one of the formulas.
Yes, it's
And then-
10 to 16.6%.
Yeah.
It would go down, for 2024, we're looking at just below 16% potentially. It can't be exact until the end of the year, but to move a tax rate 1%, it's $550.
But do that for the next 5 years, it adds up.
Yeah, you don't have enough fund balance to do that,
We don't.
no.
Do we have a fund balance to do anything?
Well,
Yeah, we do.
What
you
could we
have
do, Chris?
13 right now. They would, yeah, it would, next year, they would have to make up for it unless you didn't raise taxes again next year.
Or the other option, which is
They would have to pay eventually.
the other potential option is that we don't use the entire, we don't use all the funding that we put in the budget this year, and so we have excess that, that keeps that number in a relatively decent shape. I mean, that's what happens almost every year, is that,
Oh, right,
we do,
right.
we budget in a somewhat conservative manner, and so we often do have funds that were not used. And that-
Correct,
and that
like the
just goes into-
contingency is 300,000 alone.
Right,
is-
right,
right,
right.
right,
So
that
if we didn't
alone.
use that, that's 300,000.
So we're not
so-
that bad off.
Yeah, so, yeah, I mean, I think it's, I I know, Christine, that you don't
Well,
like,
there's a
you don't
lot
like
of
the
things
concept of a
coming up.
crapshoot.
If you want to keep 8 firefighters,
Right.
you're not gonna.
Well, right. Well, I mean, there's a lot of parts to this.
Yes,
And,
there's a
I
lot
think
of
that
moving
you got to
parts.
really think it through, but I think thinking it through in relation to what our unassigned fund balance is, I mean, I think it might be very worth thinking through putting some more of that money into the budget. And I think that that's what Steve and Jill are getting to.
Yep. I mean, just talking about the fact that the town manager is making recommendations, which I totally agree with. We need to fix this town hall building. It's antiquated, and that's going to be more money to bond out. I mean, at some point, we have to stop with all the bonds.
And that's what you will be saving right there. So if you go to the 3%, if you do the taxpayer at 3% and put the other percent in use from fund balance, again, about 580, 600,000, that's what the difference would be.
Right. So it goes from,
So also part of it, having a fund balance is being able to do projects and, not having to go out to bond. So that's one of the, benefits of having a fund balance too. It's the other side of the story.
Yeah, and capital, there was a lot of capital that was cut this year that will be needed next year. Vehicles, some of those got pushed off 1 year. Some of it was split in half. Just kind of trying to keep money around for flexibility, with all this ARPA money that's going to come out at the last minute and all these grants that are coming out that we can use for a match and keeping up with the growth of inflation.
It's just scary, 4% every single year for the next 5 years. That's just a scary number.
Well, you're looking at till 2028, so what's that, 3 years? Because you already did it once, so 2000, yeah.
But I'm just remembering the slide that you had, which was pretty scary to me, which was like if we didn't raise the taxes, we would be heading on a trajectory to bankruptcy, basically. And that's kind of what we've been doing year after year, is just not doing what we need to do. But if there would be a mechanism to use that funding to decrease the taxes
And I also know that the Finance Committee is looking at a different type of a tax plan that could bring in more revenue, taxing properties differently. So that's also something in the future.
The levy's the levy. It's not going to bring in any additional funds. It would just bring in the funds differently. But the
Correct.
funds would still be 4% or 3% or 2% would still be the same amount.
Sure, but I believe the State House is looking at actually classifying different residences in neighborhoods, commercial and such. We could tax differently at that point in time.
Right, but still 4% is your
Yeah,
max
and
levy,
it's-
so it doesn't, you're just paying it different ways or different groups, but you're still at your 4% or 3% tax levy. You can't go over the 4% unless you get a waiver.
Chris, do you know,
I would,
over the last, say, I don't know, you might not know this and I will understand, but over the last 4 or 5 years, how our budget ended up each year in terms of what we had for unused assigned funds? In other words, surplus? It's okay if you don't know that answer, but it might be a good thing for us to know, because I think, that becomes a trend. It's always, it's always data points. And if we find that we're actually, because I do think and this is not critical, I do think we're conservative in the way that we budget, and so, which is a good thing. But the fact of the matter is that if we are always finding ourselves to be in a position where we have surplus, then it would be a lot easier and more comfortable to say that maybe we could use some of the assigned the unassigned fund to ease the, to still get your 4%, but ease the numbers on the taxpayer. I think that's the point everybody here is trying to make.
Right, so you're looking for a percentage of unassigned or how we ended the year?
Both.
Both, okay.
Both.
Sorry, all right, yeah, I do not have those.
No, I know you
Yeah.
don't, but I mean, if we could have that, that would be very useful information for finalizing this budget.
Yeah, because we do have a number of people in town who are interested in doing short-term rentals just so they can make enough money to pay for their taxes. Some of the older people in this town, and we do have to protect them.
Any other
Just one
Council
more.
for Randy?
Yeah, I would just explore, even if it's not that much from the unassigned fund balance, it takes a little bit of the edge off that 4% every year. I realize it's not that we can't end up there, and I know we're playing catch up to the, we've accelerated the payments to the employees' 401K, so we are getting there. Those are significantly coming along, but I mean, it's still a large number, so I'm in agreement to it, just 4% for the sake of it, 4%. I know we need it, but if there's any way we can use a little bit more of the fund balance to take some of the edge off that.
So you want to see like a 3% or?
I would love zero like South Kingstown has.
Well,
But I know we can't get it.
3%, 3.25
Can't
maybe.
afford, zero would be.
I understand, Chris, I was just,
$4 million.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, what?
3% or 3.25, something like that. I mean, it's about 4% now, or 3.44.
This screen.
and it's tough, Chris. I know the people at home, there's no way they can read the font as well. So if you could just read the number that you're referring to, that would be really helpful.
It'd be great if I could see it.
Yeah.
Which one? is it?
Change the screens, and then Christine will tell you which one.
This is the one with the tax rate?
The levy effect is the one you want, isn't it? I think that
That
one.
one.
That was it.
That's it, right there. So those are your rates. So if you go to 3%, you can see what they're saving. It would go from, somebody with a homestead would go from $245 increase, they would go down to a $213 increase. If you went to a 2% tax levy increase to the taxpayer, it would go down to $175.50. That would be an increase over last year.
Right.
For that valuation.
So if you took 600,000, it would bring the fund balance down 1%. If you took 1.2, it would bring it down 2%.
So 600,000 would bring it down to 3%.
About that, yeah,
Okay.
about that. I mean, it's never exact, but about that.
Thanks.
And still
Thank
go
you.
for the full 4, and then, yeah.
All right, thank you. Good conversation. So we can go to the public if the council doesn't have any more comments. Anyone from the public wishing to comment? Ms. Alberto?
Catherine Celebrato, 40 Earls Court. I'm going to keep this simple because these are quite a few numbers. The
Hang on.
budget- Oh. I think it,
Would you raise your right hand, please? Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you. And would you state your full name, please? and spell it?
Catherine Celebrato, Celeberto. Okay, like I said, I'm going to try to keep it simple. It seems to be a $62 million budget, and $2 million is coming from our reserves. I object to taking money from the reserves. It's pretty much like, you're running your household, and you're taking, these are ongoing expenses, and you're taking money from your bank account to fund ongoing expenses. You'll never get ahead doing something like that. If you say you made $50,000 a year, and you put $5,000 aside, but the next year you made $50,000 and you only have $5,000 again. Next year, and that's what happens here. We bring in $60 million and we have, I don't know, 16 million or whatever in the bank. We shouldn't be drawing from that. We should be trying to build that up so that in the future when we have these big projects, we don't have to bond them out and pay interest. That's what you do. I mean, isn't this how people run their households? I hope so. You budget for big expenses. you don't spend the money that's in the bank. I don't, why we keep doing this, taking $2 million or $4 million down to what? To lower someone's tax bill a couple $100? That is really not going to make a big difference in the future, okay? What you have to do is spend according to your means. If $60 million comes in, you spend $60 million, or hopefully spend less than $60 million. This $2 million you have to take from the reserves. I can find a lot of places that could come from. One is the school department, quite frankly. We're taking in over 100 kids from Jamestown. Each one of those kids costs us about $7,000, okay? The taxpayers in Narragansett are paying to educate kids from Jamestown, which, by the way, has a higher per capita income level than we have. Why are we doing this? I know why we're doing this. We have this daycare / preschool that we fund completely. The taxpayers fund this. Every other city in town with a preschool, the state funds their preschool. I asked RIDE, I said, why aren't we getting any money? And they said, you never asked for it. So Narragansett has never asked for any money from RIDE to fund our preschool. Why would they? I mean, come on, you just give them the money, whatever they ask for. But that's not just the only thing. I'm sure there's plenty of places where spending could be readjusted. Did we ever hire that grant person, part-time grant person? Did we? Do we have a part-time grant writer? No. I mean, we need a part-time grant writer, let's face it. That we need somebody who's going to go out there and find money for us. And I think there are things we should be doing that we're not doing, but especially not spending money you have, to me, which is in the bank, that so-called unrestricted account, to me is money in the bank. I don't think we should spend it. I don't think you should juggle the budget around to save somebody a couple $100. It doesn't make any real sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public wishing to comment? So yes, that is what happened to our fund balance that we had. We have a fund balance policy for other funds. So it actually could be something that we look at, having a fund balance policy for this line item budget. So anyone else wishing to speak before we do final comments? Mr. Hames. It's a public hearing on just supporting or opposing, making comments, no questions. No. You have to get sworn in.
Yes.
Winters
Would you
Hames
raise your right
III,
hand, please? Do you
Winters
solemnly?
Hames III, H-A-M-E-S, 30 Wood Avenue, Narragansett, Rhode Island. I just noticed,
Excuse me, I have to swear you in.
oh,
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I hope
help you
so.
God? Thank you.
I had a question on the, there was 100,000 for minus on the schools. My only question on that is, I don't know where that slide is. There was two questions I had on that. Yeah, keep going, keep going, keep going. It's there someplace. Did we go past it? Nope. Nope. Go back. One, there you go. Bingo. It's just a very round number. I know you can't direct the school department as to what cuts are necessary, but did that 100,000 just come out of the air, or was it a specific thing that somebody was interested in or objection to? Anybody have any questions, answers to that?
We're not answering questions for, this is just like whether you support the budget or not. It's not a question and answer session for the public.
Well, I guess the next one you can't answer is NRPA. Can you tell me what that stands for?
Yeah, Narrow River Preservation
Very
Association,
good.
yeah.
I just want to make sure there's another organization that's got those same letters. I wanna
Oh, yeah, no, it's Narrow
make
River
sure there's
Preservation,
nothing
okay.
going on there.
Okay, thank you.
That was my two questions, but you can't tell me if the 100,000 just came out of midair or there were specific things that people.
I'm sure there were specific things, so thank you. Okay, so then, any final thoughts from the council before we close the public hearing? Councilor Kopik, okay. I do want to make sure that, as options for professional services, I know many municipalities are now getting lobbyists and lobby firms to represent their interests, and I think there's a lot going on for legislatively from, the General Assembly that does impact municipalities. So I just want to make sure that we do, for the next council, if the council would like to engage in lobbying services, I want to make sure there's a line item for that, and anything that we can do for, any recreational opportunities for the town. So that would be for fund balance too. So, okay, so with that, seeing no more questions or actually no more discussion from the council, do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion by Councilor Lawler, second by Councilor Kopech. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you for your services. Thanks. Not too bad today. All right, so we are moving back to the meeting agenda. For the Parks and Recreation Department, we have a motion to approve the sponsorship agreement with Bank Newport as per attached for the 2024 Rhode Island Philharmonic Concert sponsorship.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion from the council? Anyone from the public? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion by Councilor Lawler, second by Councilor Kopech. Motion passes 5-0. Next, we have a motion to award the bid for beach dumpster services to the lowest bidder, Narragansett Rubbish Removal, at their quoted bid prices of $34,600 for year one, $36,330 for year two, and their quoted prices for additional dumpsters and emergency pickup services for a 2-year period.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion from the council? Anyone from the public? Ms. Ciliberto.
Catherine Ciliberto, 48 Earls Court. Who owns Narragansett Rubbish Removal? Is it Mr. Brierly, or is it a town employee? And if it's a town employee, I object to it. If it's Mr. Brierly, I don't care. Thank you.
Anyone else from the public? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion by Councilor Lawler, second by Councilor Kopech. Motion passes 5-0. Next up from the Community Development Department, we have a motion to approve the amended contract with Fuss and O'Neill for additional services related to the Foddering Farm Causeway concept study for $210,000 and authorize the town manager to sign the agreement after review by the solicitor.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Tierney, I'm going to have you, can you give some of the background on this one, because this one has come up in the public apparently.
Sure. This project started back in community development in 2018 when the Nature Conservancy Trust approached the town regarding water quality and fish habitat project in Long Cove. The Harbor Island Improvement Association approached the town regarding the concerns about the causeway flooding as well for the ingress and egress to the island. There's approximately 350 dwellings on the island. The town assesses the issue, and we discussed it at meetings and the hazard mitigation plan updates. Several causeways are identified in town that are at risk for vulnerabilities from flooding, and also there's the issues with the water egress and back and forth. It's all clogged up, and a lot of the natural growth is dying in that area. We received a brick grant from the feds in 2022, and we have another award from SNAP in 2024. So the whole cost of the program is about $440,000, and we'll be getting about $332,000 in full federal funding on it. We are seeking a grant opportunity to address the water quality issues in Long Cove, as well as the flooding and marsh mitigation in that area. It's been a project that's been going on for a long time. Anyone knows in town that road is at serious risk of being cut off, and the nature around it may be affected as well with the vegetation dying.
Yeah, there are 350 residences on Harbor Island that the causeway leads to. There have been issues with emergency vehicles being able to come into during storms, school buses as well. So it's an important project. Thank you for the clarification. Anyone from the council wishing to comment?
Eva, when can we see some results? Like, is it a year down the road as far as some results?
I'm sorry?
Is it about a year down the road as far as when we see some results on the grant, for the studies? Or is that an ongoing thing?
Mr. Tierney, do you know how long that grant process is going to take?
I don't know how long it's going to take them to finish their whole study and their recommendations, but it's been in process for a while.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the council? Anyone from the public? Ms. Alberto?
Catherine Celebrato, 48 Earls Court. First, Eva, with all due respect, I don't think you should be talking about this since you live on Harbor Island. Maybe somebody else could have taken the lead. The other thing is this, it's great that we're going to get all this money to fund this study, but how much is this going to cost in the end? You need sewers on Harbor Island, and I'm concerned about spending maybe millions and millions of dollars from the unrestricted account to raise the road when you need sewers. You need sewers, you need the drains cleaned, you need the invasive vegetation taken out. All of those things would help the flooding. But I'm just concerned that I'd rather see the money go toward a sewer project than this. I know it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, but, is this going to be another bond? That's my question. I hope not. Bye.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion by Councilor Lawler, second by Councilor Kopech. Motion passes 5-0. Next, we have a motion to introduce, read, pass, and accept as a first reading an ordinance and amendment of Appendix A of the Code of Ordinances of the Town of Narragansett, Rhode Island, entitled Zoning, to amend tables and text in Sections 6 and 12 regulating two-family and multifamily dwellings.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion from the council?
About the duplexes? Is that what we're talking about? Yeah.
Multifamily,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Councilor Cicilline?
So I had some questions. It's the first reading, correct? So I don't know, I'll ask Jim and you can ask maybe Mike. There's about 6,000 properties in the town between the R10, R10A, and R20. Is that accurate?
I don't have the full number. Mike, do you have that?
Only because I'm just assuming, I'm looking at this ordinance and I'm trying to think of why we need it. It's kind of thinking way down the road, and if there's 6,000 lots, I presume that half of them are wet because they would have already been built on. So I'm just wondering if that's a reality or a false narrative, I don't know. But prohibiting bothers me, so I want to kind of make sure I really understand, the properties and what the intent is. Are there applicants for duplexes at this point? Is there any interest in that, or is there 0 applicants? I'm struggling, and I do want to talk about the affordable housing aspect of the duplex.
Yes. Mr. Tierney, is it okay if we ask Mr. DeLuca some questions, just because this is the first reading? And
Mike's got the highlighted version of the
yeah,
staff report.
okay.
That's in
Thanks,
the
Mr. DeLuca. So yes.
Good evening. We did a lot of number crunching before we even gave thought to writing this ordinance. And so I'll read you a few excerpts out of the staff report that came to you. It was actually a report signed by the planning board chair. Approximately 45% of the lots in the R10 and R10A zone are substandard lots, and over 86% of the lots in R10 are not large enough for duplexes by right as of December of 2023. So that's under the old regulations. And let me digress just a moment. Under the old regulations, we allowed single-family homes and two-family homes in virtually all of our zones except for the R80. To build a two-family home, you needed a little bit wider lot. In the R10, you needed an extra 50 feet of width, and you needed an extra 10,000 square feet of land. In the R20, you needed an extra 50 feet of width and an extra 10,000 square feet of land. So instead of a 20,000 square foot lot, you'd need a 30,000 square foot lot. In the R10, instead of a 10,000 square foot lot, you needed a 20,000 square foot lot. So we were putting in a proportionality component, and it had been there since 1991, and it worked quite well. When the bill number 6059 was passed last year, it took away the allowance for the town to regulate the lot area. And all it said was that if a record lot was equal to or larger than 50% of the lots around it in a 200-foot radius, it could be built upon. Where the problem lies is that we have numerous neighborhoods, and you folks probably know them as well as I do, that were platted many years ago. And they were platted with 40-foot wide lots, 50-foot wide lots. There are some areas that were platted with 20-foot wide lots. And with the loss of our ability to regulate the size of the lot as a standard for determination of whether something could be a buildable lot or not a buildable lot, we identified these thousands of lots that are substandard lots of record. As Councilman Bonanno states, some of them are in the wetlands, but many, many, many of them are not. Many of them are in the neighborhoods we all know as high-density neighborhoods. They're the side yard of many people who own properties, and they are vacant lots that are just not built upon. Combined, there are more than 6,000 lots in the R10 and R20 alone that were not large enough in December of '23 to build a duplex by right. What I presented to you last time in the hearing was a statement that we felt very uncomfortable, the planning board felt very uncomfortable having this lot area standard being ripped away from us. And knowing that our ordinance stated, and not every ordinance is like this, but our ordinance stated in two-family homes are allowed by right, just as one-family homes are allowed by right in those zones, R10, R10A, R20, R40. Previously, you had a lot area requirement. The state bill that got passed last year takes away the lot area requirement. So we're saying if the lot area requirement is taken away, we have the great potential to have houses built on substandard lots of single families as well as two-family homes. The planning board acknowledges there's not much you can say about a single-family home on a substandard lot. The law is the law. So they acknowledge that, they accept it, and they were not, with this proposal, suggesting that that be regulated. But when you go to two-family houses, and you consider them on substandard lots, not standard-sized lots, substandard lots of record, that was where they were concerned about the density increase and the prospect of real estate investors from not around here, buying up properties left and right, sight unseen, and pulling building permits. So as I mentioned to you at hearing, it sounds counterintuitive to suggest that two-family homes are not appropriate in the higher density zones. What we are doing and what we've suggested is that two-family homes ought to be allowable in the high density zones under certain circumstances. When every regulatable component is taken away, and in fact, and I presented that to you also, on a substandard lot of record, the setbacks are reduced by the amount that the lot is substandard. The coverage is increased by the amount of the lot that is substandard, excuse me. So we were very, very concerned that while single-family homes are going to happen on these substandard lots and should be accepted, two-family homes is essentially a bridge too far. And that was why we felt as though for the time being, unless and until the state law is changed and gives us back the authority to regulate the land area associated with two-family homes, we have to take that away. That's really what we're saying.
Thank you.
So-
Councilor Staley.
So I apologize, but I feel like it's coming fast, this prohibiting duplexes, so I want to make sure I understand it. I know we've had a public hearing, but it seems really fast. I mean, we're still in the middle of short-term rentals, so I just want to say that, like, let's just slow down a minute. But what about the compromise for affordable housing? The development of a duplex, could it be deed restricted so that we help for affordable housing? Could you elaborate a little bit on how that could benefit people that are struggling with housing?
Yeah. As you know, if you take a look at the last page of the ordinance, I'm struggling to find it at the moment. If you look at the last page of the ordinance, we state in the ordinance that two-family homes will be allowable in R40 and R80 zones by special use permit. We do set forth a land area, 100,000 square feet in the R80, 60,000 square feet in the R40. But we also set forth requirements that the setbacks and building coverage will not be changed. And that's how you get a special use permit in those two zones. But we also then add a paragraph at the end that states, if the applicant provides a deed restriction or land lease restricting at least one of the dwelling units per lot, in the case of a two-family home, to affordable housing for a period of 30 years, these standards may be waived by the building official or the planning board, depending upon which method they are coming in for approval.
Mike, not to interrupt, but they'd have to go to get a special variance. They'd have to apply. It's not just a natural happening, right? They'd have to
Right.
go to get the relief.
They would procedurally, if it was a single lot and it was going just to the building official, and they showed a deed restriction that they were ready to put on record, I believe the building official would be able to just issue the permit.
Is that a
making
solid
certain-
yes? Yes?
That's as close to a yes as I can give, knowing that
Well,
I
I'm
don't
kinda
have
nervous
the
about
authority
that
of the building
actually then.
inspector.
Yeah.
In terms of the planning board, whom I feel a little more comfortable with, if they were looking at, say, a development plan review or a land development plan of multiple houses that an individual wanted to build as duplexes, and they were being asked to approve a duplex development, and the deed restriction were brought forward, they could issue an approval with conditions that that deed restriction go on record before any of those house lots are sold.
Okay. And then I did ask a question about, are these common? Do we have anybody in the wings waiting to build a duplex? Are they permit? I mean, do people come in? Is that something that we have like 150 waiting in the wings, or?
No, of course we don't. But that's because, as you said, this came fast and furious.
I feel like we're on our skis. I'm like, what's
Well,
happening?
Today is May
Yeah, so-
6th.
yeah.
Last year, we were working under the regulations I described to you. On June 27th last year, everything changed. And then in September 27th, they gave us guidance as to how to write our ordinances. We were given 3 months to write the ordinances. So when you talk about things coming fast and furious, they sure did. Once we got past all that and put all the regulations on the books that you folks agreed to, we went back and we saw what some of those ramifications could be, and we felt as though we needed to act quickly. So my apologies for it seeming as though it's much faster than we would like to have it. However, we do know that with the passage of the law, Bill 6059 from last year, and the initiation of January 1st, 2024, that allowance was available and ready to be used by any developer. We felt as though we needed to close the loophole and hope and encourage the General Assembly to make a change in that law.
And Mike, I believe the number either you or Jill read to us, there are 99 substandard lots in the north end alone.
I don't have those numbers in front of
Thank
me.
you.
But I do know that we have a chart of that, yeah.
And as far as infrastructure, we wouldn't even have the ability to be able to hook them into our sewer, and that would be a,
Well, yeah, I could defer to Mr. Gerhardt on that, but I do know that we do lease space in the Westmoreland Sewage Treatment Plant from the University of Rhode Island because we don't own enough of that sewage treatment plant for the north end
Right.
and the center part of town.
so that's
today.
that's the other part of the problem, but, so, yeah, and we're reacting to this because it came to us quick from the State House with many, many changes, so Mike, not bad on you, thank you, and for your planning department for all the work you've done to try to help us regulate our town.
Well, thank you, and it was the planning board made a great effort, and the staff also did phenomenal work, so it wasn't
Agree.
just me.
Thank you. Any other comments? I'm
just
going to
wanted to
see
say
if
thank you as
Councilor Kopech would like to comment. Okay. Councilor Ferrandi, so I just do want to make, this legislation does come really quick, fast and furious, and it's coming from, the State House, and it's under the guise of affordable housing, and there's never any stipulations for affordable housing. So my issue is with that. So when these bills are being touted for affordable housing, but yet they have no measures to have that as a successful end result, it's really concerning to us. As a town, not because we don't want affordable housing in this town, it's because we don't have the sewer, water, infrastructure to support just all of a sudden this happening. So I believe that we were mischaracterized, and I did watch, the coverage of our planning board chair, and I thought it was very one-sided, and it took snippets, and it painted this narrative of us wanting to stop any affordable housing from happening in Narragansett, and that's the furthest thing from the truth. It's the furthest thing from us having issues with duplexes. I grew up in a duplex in Pawtucket. I grew up in a 3-generation household. No problems with it. It's just when it's like a right, and then I can already foresee, we do have issues with, investors and property owners and people wanting to run short-term businesses, and this is just an opportunity to have 2 places to rent just outright. So again, I take offense to the narrative that's out there, and it's being spread by, individuals on, close to us here as well. And it's not true. And I really applaud and appreciate the efforts of the planning board and then just the stopgap measures, because this is a stopgap measure. When we talked about inclusionary zoning, it's not that we didn't want to accept it, it was the way it was written. So we asked for an amendment, and that's all we were asking from the from the General Assembly, and it seems like it's happening, and so we're accepting of it. But when we're being characterized as not wanting to do anything because we're elitist, that's the furthest thing from the truth, and I want that to be on record, because that is very, very disturbing to me as somebody who has run on affordable housing.
And if I may just piggyback on your comment, Council President, I just want to remind all that phraseology I just read to you about waiving the requirements for affordable housing is text we added. It is not mandated to us in the state law.
Correct. See, there you go. So we are working on ways to help with affordable housing in our own efforts, with also protecting our infrastructure and our water, our sewer. I mean, we have water bans every year, every summer, year round. Like, you can't water anything. We have to, not be. It's. I think people don't understand that. I think individuals who are making these laws don't understand that communities differ, and we're not all created equal. We're not cookie cutter. We have different needs. We have ways of dealing with things in different fashions. We all want the same result. We want to see more affordable housing. We want to see more, people living here year-round. We want to see people being able to afford homes here. And again, as the planning board added that, that really great edit to, it's not a mandate, but that's the stipulation. But yeah, I appreciate that. So thank you.
I
Any
just
other
wanted to
comments?
say
Yeah.
thank you as well. I'm not for the ordinance. I don't like prohibiting duplexes, so I'm not for it, but I thank the planning board and you, Mike, for your work on it. And I just like to deal with the policies that are happening now. This feels like it's so far away from where we are.
Any other council comments? All right, anyone from the public? Ms. Aliberto.
Catherine Celebrato, 48 Earls Court. First, I'd like to say something. There's always a lot of talk about how Pier residents don't want affordable housing. And in fact, all of the freestanding affordable housing is in the Pier. Fifth Avenue, Congdon Street, Mansion, Third Street. This is where all the freestanding affordable housing is, as well as Water's Edge and the two elderly complexes. So, I mean, we really have a lot of the affordable housing, and that's fine with me. About a year or so ago, before these changes in the General Assembly, I filed an APRA, and I asked how many vacant lots were in town of 5,000 square feet or more. And there are 800 vacant lots in this town of 5,000 square feet or more that are potentially developable. Well, they're all developable now, let's face it. And the General Assembly also merged lots, I believe. That's something else they did. And again, I say the same thing. It's all under the guise of affordable housing. But no one, if someone now by right can build a duplex on a 5,000 square foot lot, unless you put limits on that, nobody is going to build an affordable housing. Nobody. And you find me somebody who will build an affordable house on a 5,000 square foot lot without a mandate, sometime a conditions or mandate, I'll take you both all of you, to Spain, because that's not going to happen in this town. We know that. So therefore, you have to put limits. And the only way we can do this right now is taking away the by right part of this. And still, the zoning board can give variances. And that's a concern. We have a zoning board, which I always say never saw a variance it didn't like, and there has to be some kind of control there also. But this is not, doing what we're doing now is not going to affect affordable housing. If you were to put some kind of a mandate on this where somebody could build on a substandard lot, if, again, one unit was to be affordable, one is not, then that's, I'm not sure how you're going to do that, tell you the truth, but we can't just allow anything now because there'll just be wholesale duplex building for investment purposes. And I don't think anybody's so naive that they don't believe that. Thank you.
Thank you. I agree. All the legislation that's coming forward is designed for builders and developers. And then if there were stipulations such as, making, if it's a year-round or affordable housing, then that would be different. And that's kind of the conversation that we would have, just like, again, when we revisit it. So I hope there are going to be amendments to the legislation that is being touted as affordable housing legislation. Ms. Bush, I see your hand up.
Read about that bill, and I was astounded that the state could just take our power away as a town. And like you, I've been maligned in the past and called terrible things because I was not for overdevelopment. I don't like to see this town destroyed. I don't like to see every square inch of land developed. I don't like to see loss of trees and green space. I don't like to see the stormwater runoff issues that we have and basements flooding like they've never flooded before. We're built out, really. The land just can't handle more. So, but my question is, between this horrific bill and what I just saw the finance director talk about the potential loss of the revenue taxes, I guess I'm curious what kind of, you mentioned before the potential of having a part-time lobbyist. I would just like to know that we're being represented, that somebody's keeping an eye on what's going on in the State House and speaking up for us, whether that's through a municipal association or lawyers or lobbyists. I feel like somebody needs to look out for our interests. We're getting steamrolled down here. Thank you.
We do have the League of Cities and Towns that represent us, but they are representing every municipality, and it is, bills get introduced left and right, and I think they were up to like 2,300 or 2,400 bills that were introduced and need to be monitored. And again, we do have members of the council and other members from the town that go and do testify. So I just want to make that known. Okay, any other comments? If not, I will I will take the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed?
Yay.
Okay, motion by Councilor Lawler, second by Councilor Kopek. Motion passes 4-1. Next up, from the Engineering Department, we have a motion to approve, ratify, and confirm change order number 9 with E.W. Berman Incorporated for the Maury Luntjens Memorial Library renovation project in the amount of $1,468.
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion from the council? Anyone from the public?
Just the always questions, Jim, is the money available is in their account?
It is in the library donation account and professional services through the bond. And this may be the last change order for construction for this portion of the project.
Yay.
Yep. It's good. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone from the public? Sorry, Council for Randy, were you?
No.
Okay, sorry. Anyone from the public? All in favor? Aye. All
Aye.
opposed? Motion by Councilor Lawler, second by Councilor Kopek. Motion passes 5-0. Next, we have a motion to approve the purchase of a replacement pump for wastewater's Galilee Pump Station from New England Environmental Equipment Incorporated in the amount of $19,086.
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion from the council? Anyone from the public? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion by Councilor Lawler, seconded by Councilor Kopek. Motion passes 5-0. Next, from the Finance Department, we have a motion to read, pass, and adopt as a second reading for an ordinance and amendment of Chapter 70 of the Code of Ordinance of the Town of Narragansett, Rhode Island, entitled Taxation and Finance, specifically Section 70-1A, entitled List of Rateable Property.
So moved.
Second?
Okay, this is just that minor edit. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion by Councilor Lawler, second by Councilor Kopek. Motion passes 5-0. Next, from the Building and Zoning Department, we have a motion to read, pass, and adopt as a second reading an ordinance and amendment of Chapter 14 of the Code of Ordinances of the Town of Narragansett entitled Businesses, specifically Article 16 entitled Rental Dwellings, reordering Article 17 Solicitations and adding a new Article 17 entitled Short-Term Rentals.
So moved.
Second.
This is a second reading, but I will, if the council members have any final thoughts or comments on this, Councilor Kopek.
Indeed. I actually think that we should always be able to do this at a second reading, but
We used to.
that's not relevant here. So there were 3 things that I had concerns about in this ordinance, and I am in favor of most of this ordinance. I think it's imperative that we have some sort of regulation for short-term rentals, and by and large, most of this is, we've made some changes, but, and most of this, I think, makes a great deal of sense. But there are 3 things that I have a concern. One is based on all of the testimony that we heard in the the 2 times that we did the first reading. It seems to me that we could take a look at the notion and revise this to include off-season, shorter-term rentals. And when I say shorter term, I'm saying either 3 or 4 days during the periods between, and my thinking would be the periods between October 1st and May 1st. A lot of what we heard from people who live in town and have housing, rental properties in town, made a case that there's a need for we don't have a ton of hotels in this town, and there's a need for support for people who have family who come in on holidays. We do have a lot of students here, but even if the students weren't living in Narragansett, parents who come for various and sundry events would probably need to find a place to stay, and this is one of those kinds of places. One of the concerns that we've had with people who use shorter term than 7 days during the summer period is that, there's a lot of activity outside that can be disruptive to the residents. We do have a tremendous amount of rental property in our residential areas. And in the wintertime, the late fall, the early spring, chances are most activities would not take place outside. So I would really like to consider this and consider adjusting it. I think it makes some great sense, and it also is very supportive of all of our small business folks here in town for the period when we're not that busy the way that we are in the summer. So that's the first thing. The second one is we had, and I don't know how many people this affects, but we do have some people in this town who rent out on occasion just rooms in their house. And I think Evan and I had a conversation about this, and I guess this could be considered a boarding house, but I don't think that's exactly what some folks were looking for. They have a single room, they want to, or in a bathroom, whatever, an ensuite room. For some short periods of time in the year, whatever, and the owner is present on the premises. And I don't think we addressed that issue either. I think an owner-occupied home is not necessarily a boarding house, but it seems to me that it makes some sense to allow for that kind of rental as well. And the last thing, which is probably the smallest of them all, but I find it weird, is section 14549D, the residential character item, where there's this strange group of items about that I really don't understand what they mean. And I think if we took the items out, the statement itself would work just fine. I don't know how we would enforce something like somebody complaining about glare or vibration or odors. Those things just strike me as really weird. And I think it's just, I'm all for specificity, I'm all for defined language, but I don't think that adds anything to this ordinance. It seems very strange. We have had recently a few emails from other people asking for the specifics of how some of these things will work. I don't think that's really our purview, but I think that we need to make sure that we're responding to people as much as possible who want to know what's going to happen once this ordinance is passed. I don't know if there's a way to make any adjustments to the ordinance in the second reading, so I need to know the answer to that question.
I believe I've already inquired about this. Any even minor edits would have to go back to a first reading, and I'm just going to confirm that with our solicitor.
That's correct. Any modifications would set it back to the first reading.
Thank you, Deb.
Okay.
Okay. Councilor Ferrandi, any comments?
No comment.
Councilor Lawler?
Mark or Jim, could you please comment to the owner-occupied and accessory dwelling component of the short-term rental?
These are not accessory dwellings that I was referring to.
But there is,
Okay, so you're asking a different question.
no, not talking question.
Okay.
What specifically is the question?
So in the short-term rental, if someone has an accessory dwelling at their house, they living there, and there is a separate room and a bathroom and a kitchen, so it's a separate dwelling. Is that included in the short-term rental ordinance?
If it's an ADU and it meets all the requirements for a space to be habitable, it would be available for rent.
Okay, and the same thing as owner-occupied, but that is allowed. Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
I mean, as Deb mentioned, it's not necessarily a boarding house, but there are rules for rooming houses,
Right.
which get to how the house is laid out, what the bathroom situation is, and the kitchen situation. But those are exempt. Boarding house, rooming house are exempt from these restrictions. But ADUs would be fully rentable.
Okay.
So someone who had I'm sorry, I don't always get the language right, a rooming house, I guess would be the one that I was referring to, they could rent as any
Yeah.
way they want.
So that was the clarification I did get from our building official, and it does state in the ordinance, under section 14-543C of the short-term rental ordinance, rooming houses would be exempt from the regulations. And I think we were just referring to one of the speakers that came and who was a widow and who rented her room out. So what she describes would fall under that exemption.
I mean, people have to be versed. There are restrictions and requirements for rooming house. You can't just declare your house a rooming house. There are requirements for that.
Correct. Okay.
But does anybody have any idea how many rooming houses we have in Narragansett? Identified as such? Because I suspect there's more unidentified ones than identified ones.
Just like all the rentals in town.
Yeah, I don't think anyone has that number at the top of their head, but we can definitely get that
Sorry.
number to you. Counselor Kopech. Okay.
So
Counselor Sling-Banano?
I said the last time that regulation is important for the short-term rentals, but I didn't really love this process. I mean, we never met with DeSisto, we emailed Granicus, but we never really listened to the stakeholders, so I object a little bit to how this evolved. But I'm going to tell you what I don't like about it tonight, and I guess we can't change it. I have a similar list to you, Deb, actually. That residential character was really hard for me to understand. Odor, glare, I thought it was really a paragraph that should have just been eliminated, so I had an issue with that. I had owner occupied. If you live in the home, you should be able to rent it to somebody. You're in the house. I have no issue with that. I think we should accept that. Allowing the shorter periods of time. I've had so many people say to me, you know, we want to come for Memorial Day weekend, there's nowhere to stay, why can't they do shorter terms? And I think the state's actually looking at 3 or 4 days. I totally support that. May to October, give the opportunity for those people, they rent to people that are coming in to see a show or to come to Narragansett for a lot of reasons, they like that opportunity. So I think that this ordinance in front of us tonight lacks that. And I have a lot of difficulty with the local representation, and I'm not really even sure how that works. It sounds like you have to be a police for your property kind of thing. And I don't know if, Mark, if you're as familiar with this ordinance. I know DeSisto worked on it. But can you just run through how the local representative is going to work on this ordinance?
The local representative would act as and in place of the owner. So if an owner is out of state or chooses not to be the one that is responsible for the property, if there's a complaint, they would be notified, and they would be responsible for either calling the police or calling their tenants and rectifying the situation. So I don't think anyone anticipates the local representative or an owner of getting into a situation where they're taking on police powers. But I was a landlord for many years in Narragansett, and I had made it a point to let my neighbors know that if there's a problem, call me and I will address it. And so in that sense, I was a local representative. And I got calls at 2 in the morning, and I got up and I drove to the house and I told them to knock it off. It was normally loud noise or screaming or whatever the hell they were doing. So, and if it was something that I didn't want to deal with or couldn't deal with, I would call the police. So I don't think this ordinance puts any police requirements, police power requirements on them, but it does make them aware of the situation, and it requires them to go there and address it one way or another.
Okay, thank you. So those, I mean, I think it's in pretty good shape too, but I object to not having the things in that I just mentioned. And Deb, your list is very similar. I just have one extra. So if we can't make any edits or change it, you know, I don't know, there's words that work around it. I don't really want to adopt an ordinance that we're going to try to work around our own ordinance. So I don't really see this being finished. So I would have to say that I can't support it unless we can make those amendments tonight.
Okay, just to give some comments, some of the concerns that came up, which is why I wanted council members to address those concerns, because I think overall, council members do support some sort of regulation of short-term rentals. You know, and just to address the glare and the odor part of the ordinance, you know, when I did reach out to our building official just to find out, like, if we had some other ordinances, and it doesn't specifically address glare, odor, or vibration in general, but it does address some specific commercial industrial uses. So our building official states that there isn't specific zoning criteria which we can use to determine a violation of those conditions. And then it's basically in the zoning table of use regulations, he did state that there's a statement in there that says any use which is noxious or offensive by reason of the commissioner of odor, dust, noise, smoke, heat, vibration, gas, fumes, or radiation, or which presents a hazard to the public health and safety shall be prohibited. So again, it may not be specifically outlined in the ordinance, but you know, that's something that we are working on, having you know, frequently asked questions, like questions and answers that will be posted and that will be addressed. So I don't have an issue with that staying in the ordinance. Again, there were issues with maybe the noise or, you know, ordinance in the ordinance. Any noise would be handled by police with the current noise ordinance. And then our building official didn't anticipate any new glare complaints, as all of these properties are already rentals and complaints would have already been received. So it hasn't been an issue. And so this means, like, you know, floodlights or things like that. But that's in there. It's kind of standard language. We worked with a third-party vendor who's an expert in short-term rentals. And then, and again, odor is one that is very subjective and maybe difficult to enforce. But when discussed about this portion of the ordinance, our building official said he had no problem keeping it as is. If we find we have any issues with enforcement of any of those items, we can make changes later that address it specifically. So it would be specifically addressing an issue that comes up. You know, we don't have every single answer or every single scenario. That's what, you know, that's why you keep it general and then you have it there again.
This isn't general. This is specific.
Well, it's specific, but, you know, but it does define. I mean, so there needs to be something to address. I feel it does. I mean, we didn't make this ordinance up. It's not, the council didn't come here and make up an ordinance. We actually contracted a third-party vendor who specializes in short-term rental ordinances. We dealt with outside legal counsel. We paid for those services. We actually had our solicitor work on it. So this was a process that we have been working on for a very long time. And it's come from 30 days, and then it came to no days limit, and it came to 7 days limit. And the reason why, and I think everybody on this council knows where that 7-day limit came from, and that was from the affordable housing study that we actually had, and then it came, we had the final Crane report, and it did suggest the 7-day limit, 7-day minimum, as a way of helping with the issue of affordable housing issues in our town. So I think it's disingenuous if people here are saying that that's not a good number, or that's not, that it should be this or that. What I'm saying is that I think, you know, a rental or landlord can set the price like an off-season rate where it makes it desirable for somebody. Okay, it may be whatever the rate what would be like a 3-day rental would be a week long. And you know what, to me, I see the opposite side of that, where it could actually help our economy and bring in people who are like, okay, I wasn't planning on staying for a week, but this is a great opportunity. I have this great rate for a week on the off season. I'm gonna make a week-long trip out of this, or I'll just stay a few days or whatever. But people will, you know, if people need the rental and it's priced right, and from what I'm hearing is that off-season, it's like a 3-day rental or a weekend rental. But this recommendation came from the planning board. It came for the transiency. You don't want strangers coming in and out of your neighborhood. You know, so the 7-day limit is that, and it's also making it less desirable. And I'm telling you, these ordinances do work, because I had a friend from college who contacted me because knew we were working on ordinances, was thinking about buying a second home, a second property. Oh, I want to buy a second home, but I don't know if it will work economically, because I hear that there's, you know, limits on the rentals, limit on the permits. It's not going to be financially feasible, so I probably won't be doing it, because if it's not a guaranteed income. So that's the intent of the short-term rental ordinance, it's part of the process to make housing more affordable here. So it's one of the key issues that we were addressing. We already addressed the 3-student, that was part of it. We did the bulk zoning, and this is the short-term rental ordinance that we talked about and that we've worked on with experts. So I don't see what the issue is. I think, if it is a business, and we're calling it short-term rental businesses. And then we've had emails where, I bought this as a business. So it's not somebody for living here year-round. We want to see those people here. We want to prevent, friends of mine who want to buy a house and make an investment and just be able to rent it out and then do short-term rentals. We want to have somebody buy it, live here year-round, be part of the community. Because again, here we are getting accused of not wanting housing affordable, people year-round or housing affordability, but we are. These are mechanisms that we're doing so that it does help with affordability. And that came from the Crane report. So we hired a consultant to help us with this issue. We paid good money for it, and then you get the final report. So what I want to do is start chipping away at those recommendations, and the 7-day minimum was a recommendation. So that's why it was included, and that's why I think this ordinance is good as is. And we do have business owners, and they'll figure out a way. It's a week long, and I feel that we will stimulate the economy because people may stay. So I see the opposite side of it. I see the other side, and so with that, those are my comments, and I know that we're not always going to agree on everything, but when we hire consultants to do reports and we get the results, and then I think it's just continually kicking the can down the road. It's the definition of insanity. Doing the same thing over and over again, getting another report, getting another consultant. I don't like the results, and then expecting different results. We have data, we have information, and we act on it, and that's what we're doing, and that's what this ordinance is. And so with that, I've all the council members have been allowed to, or just they have their comments on record, because I think we all want the same thing. We want more housing affordability here. So that's why I thought it was important that the council members discuss what issues they had with it. But again, it's been a long process, and I feel it's ready to go as is. Any issues that we come up with from the enforcement piece of it with odors or whatnot, we can address it at a later point. But for now, I think it's the second reading, so I will take a vote. So all in favor?
Aye.
Before we vote, can I just say, Eva, I think you've done a great job with bringing this through, and I think the point that you're making tonight is a really important part. Granicus is a company we hired who deals with short-term rental issues and ordinances all around the country. So they know the problems, they know what has worked, what has not worked, they know when to add language, such as what we were discussing, and when not to. So that is a key component of it. We have 23% of the short-term rentals in the state, in this town. And I know we've received emails from individuals who, they do call themselves business owners in town that do own these hotels in neighborhoods. And they like to remind us that they potentially would like to sue. But I'm waiting for the first neighborhood to sue us by saying to us, hey, how come you're not protecting our rights? Town council, why are you allowing commercial businesses to happen in my residential neighborhood? Because that's the other part of the story, and I agree with you, Eva, and that needs to be told, and hopefully we'll be telling that story tonight.
Could I say one more thing?
Sure.
The first thing I want to say is that the person who first, discussed the idea of 7-day rentals was me. And that was in our meeting in October of 2022. So I just want to make that point. I've never had an issue with that concept ever. I also was the person who brought Granicus to the table. So I had met with them, and I actually introduced you to them, Eva. And I think I think Granicus did a very, very, very good job. I think it is time to do this, but I like to do things sort of right from the beginning, and I feel like, Susan made the point that we probably should have had a discussion amongst the town, the town council, which we have to do in public, just to work through a couple of these issues. That didn't happen, and that's what led me to say what I had to say today, and I think it's as legitimate as any other thing. I applaud the work that's been done here. I think that this is the right, I think we're on the right track, but I do think there are some things that could have been done better. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, take the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
I'm going to abstain again, sorry.
Okay. Motion by Counselor Lawler, second by Counselor Kopek. Motion passes 3 with 1 nay and 1 abstention. Next, from the town clerk's office, we have a motion to approve a holiday license application submitted by Ocean State Pickleball LLC, doing business as Ocean State Pickleball Club, 360 South Pier Road, Narragansett, Rhode Island, subject to state and local regulations.
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion from the council? Anyone from the public? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion by Counselor Lawler, second by Counselor Kopek. Motion passes 5-0. Next, we have a motion to approve a holiday license for Traveling Gypsy Incorporated, doing business as Traveling Gypsy, 36 Pier Marketplace, Narragansett, Rhode Island, subject to state and local regulations.
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion from the council? Anyone from the public? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion by Counselor Lawler, second by Counselor Kopek. Motion passes 5-0. Next, we have a motion to approve a holiday license for Traveling Gypsy Incorporated, doing business as Shell Boutique, located at 32A Pier Marketplace, Narragansett, Rhode Island, subject to state and local regulations.
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion from the council? Anyone from the public? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion by Counselor Lawler, second by Counselor Kopek. Motion passes 5-0. Next, we have a motion to approve a holiday license application for Traveling Gypsy Incorporated, doing business as Special Tea Shop, located at 38A Pier Marketplace, Narragansett, Rhode Island, subject to state and local regulations.
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion from the council? Anyone from the public? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion by Counselor Lawler, second by Counselor Kopek. Motion passes 5-0. Next, we have a motion to appoint one individual to the Narragansett Housing Authority for a term to expire on April 30th, 2029.
So moved.
Second?
What I'd like to do is continue this. Something was brought to my attention earlier, like a couple hours before we started, and we just needed to address some issues with this one. So I'd like to make a motion to continue this agenda item.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion by Counselor Lawler, second by Counselor Kopek. Motion passes 5-0. Next, we have a motion to appoint William Osborne to the Galilee Advisory Committee to fill an unexpired term that expires on November 1st, 2026.
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion from the council? Anyone from the public? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion by Counselor Lawler, second by Counselor Kopek. Motion passes 5-0. Lastly, we have motion to pass a resolution requesting the General Assembly approval of legislation for the issuance of $3 million bonds for affordable housing in the town of Narragansett.
So moved.
Second?
Okay, so this is being brought back. We did have, it was continued. We had a work session, which should have happened initially. So the process should have been followed. So it has come back. We had the work session. It was informative. It was public, which is the way it should have happened to begin with. We were able to get questions answered. And so it's coming back on for discussion. We can discuss it as a council and then go to the public. Councilor Cicely Bonanno.
I mean, I think we all spoke about it last time. It's a motion on to send it up to the General Assembly so the voters of Narragansett can make their decision. It would be on the ballot, so people could vote. So tonight is really not about forecasting, the future budget, because so many things rely, I don't know who's going to be on the council, what's the rate, what's OPEB going to be like. This is just an opportunity to say, could you vote for this? Yes, it could sit there, you could spend the money, you could do nothing with it. So don't get it, again, let's not get ahead of ourselves. It's basically so the voters can make the decision. That's all we're asking for tonight, to go to the General Assembly for the power to put it on the ballot.
Any other council members?
I have a question. So is the committee coming back to us with a recommendation about more specifics? I know last time we met, Mike said that he could meet with their department and come back to us with some more specifics on what you're talking about doing.
I believe not.
No. Because that's some, I mean, Deb just mentioned something in her talk about the short-term rental, like wanting to have specifics, detailed explanations. And that's the one thing for me here that's lacking. I understand that we want to have it go to the voters and have them vote, but it's really important that the voters know what they're voting for. What I mean by that, in this bill, will it be a bond for workforce housing? Will it be a bond for elderly housing? How about veterans housing or handicapped housing? Will it be for a not-profit? Will it be for a developer? Those are really important things, because if we don't include the specifics, we'll end up having people voting for something that they didn't think they were voting for, and that will become problematic. And then ultimately, if we do push it forward without those specifics, it won't be the voters deciding what we're going to be doing. It'll be whoever is sitting on the town council at the time that will be approving that build of the affordable housing, whatever that might be. So I was hoping that you guys are going to be coming back with some specifics, saying it's going to be for workforce housing or for elderly housing, and half of it will be aimed for rental, the other part for purchase. But there's nothing more.
Well, I'll repeat what I said at the last meeting. So the $3 million is going to be for the following. It's going to be to purchase or acquire land. It's going to be to purchase larger parcels or the infill lots that the Crane report speaks to. Grants for first-time home buyers for affordable housing, down payment assistance, grants, loans for preservation and rehabilitation so people can stay in their houses that they're living in. So again, grants and loans for nonprofits. There's a plan, but we're so far, we're talking about the next budget and the next possibility. So those were the buckets of ideas that are in the Bond Act, that are with this for the General Assembly. So that's as planned as we can be for right now. Tonight I heard a lot of speculation on things. There's not anything written in stone. Again, another council comes, they can decide their priorities, roads, affordable housing. We don't know what's going to happen in the future, but that's what the plan is right now. If the $3 million is approved by the voters, those are the ways that they're going to use the money.
So it's a huge bucket of things, Susan. That's what I'm saying, is that I would like for the voters to understand more about specifics, like what would the plan be? That's so many different things that it could be. And so any person that walks into the voting booth that day might think they're voting for one or the other, but then in actuality, when it comes time to fruition to have the project happen, it might not be what they voted for, what they thought they voted for. We just saw this not long ago with the bond question for the library. A lot of people, including me, who voted for it, thought I was voting for the old site, not the IGA building. So I think that we need to be really specific with what we're talking about, so the voters can vote and get what they think they're voting for.
Yeah, so I appreciate that. And again, the bondsman writes the language, so it's general but specific. So if we say we want to do something and something, we have that ability to be a little flexible. So this is about as scripted as it can be to support affordable housing. So I guess the question is, do you support affordable housing?
Somehow I knew you were going to say that. And I think the question's asking about financial and specifics doesn't mean that you don't support affordable housing. I want to know, I want to vote for this. I want to vote for some type of affordable housing, but I want to know what I'm voting for. I want to know what my vote is doing, so that the ballot comes in November, that I know what the town is going to be voting for. This is not telling me what I'm voting for. If you came tonight, Susan, if you said that you wanted to go ahead and put a bond out for workforce housing, and have a portion of it be whatever it might be.
Well, it is considered workforce.
But it's considered so much stuff in there, is just my point.
$3 million, yeah.
Councilor Ferrandy.
Thank you, Eva. I'm going to take a little bit of different tack. The way I'm looking at this situation is that, the onus shouldn't be just on Narragansett to fund the affordable housing. I get it, it's going to the voters and all that sort of stuff. But there's some new developments actually in the State House now, where Governor McKee is trying to get a funding formula similar to the school funding formula for affordable housing for every city and town to take part in. So, certainly they bear some responsibility of the affordable housing crisis, with the mandate of 10%, and they've been asking a lot of these towns to come up to speed. And I think, I mean, I think it's worth it for us to also work with our state delegation, Carol McEntee, Representative Tanzi, and others, to try to work it, see if we can get a bill or get something in the legislation to get the state to fund some of this. I mean, the schools couldn't operate without a school funding formula. And I think looking at minimum of about $100 million to put into a fund where we could get a share of that, and we might not have to do this particular bond. So I think some of the new developments that I'm looking at, and I'm not so, you know, I realize it's all about affordable housing. I did ask the bond council there, I said, how many other towns are actually, you know, doing their own bond for this? And he did quite a few towns. He said maybe about half the state, and he said, I didn't have any. I guess he had one in Jamestown that wanted to do a bond, and then it was decided because of the financial situation, it wouldn't be, I guess, conducive for them to have it. I think the town manager pulled it. Providence had done one in 2020, I believe, or 21. So I think of it a little more of a holistic approach to it. So those are my thoughts on it. Thank you.
So again, I didn't have an issue with, you know, voters deciding on this. I wanted to make sure a process was followed, which meant that it was going to be vetted out and be publicly, you know, if there were questions would be answered. I think we do put it, if we put it out to vote for the voters to decide, at least we know whether they want the bond or not. If it gets voter approval, you know, the next town council, they don't have to take out the bond. They can cancel bond. They can use the general fund for it if they don't want to pay taxes on it. But I think the important piece is to allow the voters to decide whether they want to spend our taxpayer money or our funds for helping the affordable housing issue that we have all throughout the state and in our town. So again, the reason this came back from the last time was because it needed to be vetted, and it has been, so I support it. As we said, we have a fund balance, and if the voters decide that we want to contribute to it, then we can work with the next council can figure it out, and we can work with finance. And I thought it was important to have what the cost would be for having a bond, and I think that's out there, and we know. And then when we put it out on the ballot, it'll be the information will be provided so that our you know, our residents and the voters are educated on what this actually is. So I will support it.
You mentioned, because we did receive that email from Finance today about what the bond would actually cost at 10, 15, and 20 years. And I believe, Christine, is it 15 years, it's $825,000, million, 825, 800, and then $1.2 million for 10, and $1.4 million for so it's not going to be just the $3 million. It's going to be, that's the cost of having the bond, so it's more than
Right, so I have that information in front of me, and that's what a bond is. You pay interest on a bond.
No, I understand, but
yeah.
just putting it out there.
Right.
So, because we just went through a meeting where we're talking about a 4% increase over, where we're talking about more, the town hall actually increasing the bond for the town hall property itself. So just putting it out there that we're spending an
That's
awful lot of
really
money.
just kind of putting the cart before the horse. I think
Just
what
a
Susan
great-
said and what Eva said makes tremendous sense. We are simply asking a question and looking for the answer. And what we do with that is what the next council will do.
Right.
I will support that.
I
as well.
understand your point, but we're not being specific. We're not really,
No.
we're just saying, hey, here are a
think there's
bunch of different
lots of
things.
specificity.
But if it was specific, I'd be voting for it.
Okay, I'll go to the public. Anyone from wishing to comment on this from the public? Ms. Ciliberto.
Catherine Ciliberto, 48 Earls Court. Now, $3 million is not even going to make a dent in the amount of affordable housing we have to build in this town. That's number one. Number two, if we're going to take any money from the unrestricted account, it seems to me it should be for this reason, not to fill a gap because we're overspending what's coming in. But I do agree with Ms. Lawler that it's not specific enough. It allows, you're just going to bond out $3 million, and the next town council, we don't know what their attitude's going to be, may decide to give that $3 million to a private developer. And I don't want to see that happen, frankly. I don't think we need more condos for affordable housing. I think we need rental housing. We seriously need rental housing in this town, affordable rental housing. And this is not specific enough. You're asking the voters to pretty much agree to put a $3 million bond and let the next town council decide how it's going to be spent. And that's really not a good idea. I think that if you would amend the language a bit to make sure it was going to be for, say, rental housing, family housing, that type of thing, it would be much better than this. And the other thing is this, there's supposed to be so much money out there. I thought Scacacci put aside all this money for affordable housing, and why aren't we going after any of it? Why aren't we trying to get grants? We're not doing the legwork, We should be looking at all ways to get money. But again, I don't think $3 million is enough, and I would even go for $10 million if it was specific. And you have to first decide what we really need in this town, what type of affordable housing. Then you set aside a figure, and then you let the voters decide. They have to know exactly what they're voting on. Thank you.
Thanks. And I think the Affordable Housing Trust Collaborative has individuals with skill sets that know how to address that issue. Anyone else from the public? Mr. Edwards.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the council. I will be very brief. I know it's late. Nick Edwards, 36 Crest Avenue, Narragansett. I'm also the chair of the Narragansett Affordable Housing Trust Collaborative. So I just want to say that I think I'll know at this point you have the full support of the Narragansett Affordable Housing Collaborative Trust when it comes to this. Just a few reminders for the people at home. We're asking for a town council resolution in support so the General Assembly can introduce this, and then it goes on the ballot in November for all the voters in Narragansett to decide. We've had a work session, we've had a lot of conversations in our committee about this, and I think this is a great moment tonight that this looks like it has the votes to pass. And I just want to publicly thank the members of the council who support this tonight. I think as Councilwoman Cicilline Bonanno mentioned, we do have a plan. We want to, see what's out there. We've said it before, but, we also want to create incentives for first-time home buyers, establish grants, and Councilwoman Lawler had a great idea, some incentives to convert homes to year-round rentals. And, I just think this is a very good step in the right direction. And again, I appreciate the support. And I think, again, we'll let the voters decide, see what happens. But again, I would encourage everyone to come to the Affordable Housing Collaborative Trust, provide your ideas, provide your proposals, and we're more than happy to work with you. But again, thank you to the members of this council. This has been a busy process, a busy session, and we really appreciate your support of this tonight. So thank you. Thank you, Eva.
Anyone else from the public before we take the vote? All right. All in favor? Aye. All opposed?
Abstain.
Abstain.
Okay, so we, motion by Councilor Lawler, second by Councilor Kopech. Motion passes with 3 and 2 abstentions. Okay, so with that, we just have, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, all opposed? Motion by Councilor Lawler, second by Councilor Kopech. Motion passes 5-0. Good night, everyone.